Hey everyone, welcome to another Toolbox Tech Talk. You know, there's just an excuse for me to groove on a Sunday and listen to some tunes and talk to some interesting people. So today is all about, I better take my sunnies off, I always forget to do that. Today is all about recycling solar panels. And I've got a few guests. I can see Anthony's in the green room waiting. And Anthony, it's looking like your vision's working. And I've got Jed, who also works for Lotus Energy, in there too. And I've got a few guests coming in to have a chat to us and ask some questions of our guests. So it's Ray. I can see you in the green room there. So I'll bring some live questionnaires back in a minute. So first up, I want to introduce Anthony. So I'm going to bring Anthony on. Hang on, just turn my tunes down there. So you ready, Anthony? Here we go. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Glenn, how are you? Great to be on the show, mate.
Great. So Anthony's actually at the footy. His son had a change of venue at the last minute, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm up in South Belgrave, so apologies for the second-rate connection.
That's okay. These things happen. Anthony, I reached out to you because I got very excited when I heard about what you're doing with recycling of solar panels. And I know that my audience is all about renewables. And one of the things that keeps coming up all the time is it really a clean energy business when you've got a waste product that no one knows what to do with? And that's kind of where you come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can relate. My family started doing solar or installing solar 30 years ago, and it's been a common objection, and we thought it was a good idea to invest in it for the future.
Well, that's great. So when did you first sort of get into thinking about or starting this recycling business?
Sure. It was late 2019, and we'd decided to invest in another business recycling cables, and we felt that we could perhaps run a trial with some of the equipment that we had that would potentially be able to recycle the solar modules themselves. And that test was quite successful. We surprised ourselves, because normally testing doesn't go that well first go. And then we started the journey, and a lot of that journey has been in the middle of COVID as well, which made it challenging.
Yeah. I can so imagine just trying to get your staff into the building.
Yeah. So
right. So you started with cable recycling and then extended it out to solar panels.
Yes. Yeah. So we invested in and did a bit of a joint venture with a company called JR Hammer, and they had already created a cable recycling facility, and we felt that together with our joint knowledge, we could build something that would recycle the solar themselves. And it's certainly a lot of challenges, and no doubt a lot of your listeners are probably curious of how we deal with some of those challenges. But yeah, that was sort of, it was very, I would say, I guess, mutual, concept and alignment of our thoughts in terms of business, of the social impact aspects. And for a lot of people would be surprised to hear that it wasn't financially driven. It was actually driven on the basis of it needs to happen for our industry, and it can make money in the future. That's great, but right now we have to invest in getting it up and running, like for our industry in Australia. So
you're based in Melbourne?
Yes, we are. So the first plant that we've built is in Thomastown, in just out of Melbourne, and we do have a plan to expand that into other states as well, because logistics is quite a challenge with moving solar modules around Australia.
That was going to be my next question. Is I've already had a lot of interest in what you do, and a lot of that is from interstate, and they're going, oh, it's all very well. You've got the service in Melbourne, but what about Sydney, Brisbane, etc. So you are planning on expanding.
Yeah, absolutely. We already have a site up in New South Wales. We've got a number of customers ourselves that are shipping modules from Fremantle, from Ipswich, up in Queensland, and right now we're accommodating it from an aspect of that we're reducing the recycling costs based on some of those further logistics challenges. We don't want it to be a point of people aren't recycling, so we're happy to lower those costs and take into consideration what they're actually having to cover in terms of that logistics.
Yeah, so when it comes to recycling a solar panel, what do you actually get at the end of recycling?
Sure. So at the moment, we're recovering about 95% of the module in weight. There's the obvious components of the aluminium, and we managed to get that out at what's classified as a graded to 6,000, which is basically an extrusion grade aluminium. Pretty straightforward and probably no big surprise to the listeners. Some of the other more challenging things is the glass and handling of the glass, and we're managing to extract the powdered glass and extract the solar cells themselves, the silica cells, so mono or polycrystalline as we'll know them as a general thing. There's also rare earth metals and silver in a lot of them. So there's lots of great, and important products embedded in them, and testing around extracting rare earth metals like rhenium that's in some of the modules. And we're extracting the copper, which from the cables is probably no great surprise. On the image there, that's actually some of the materials that have been extracted from the cables, and of course the alley from the frame. And the thing we're left with, Glenn, and we haven't challenged, of course, is the backing sheet. It's an epoxy backing.
Oh, gone suddenly quiet. We just had a little bit of a glitch there. Sorry, everyone. So Anthony's frozen for some reason. I might just jump over to Jed. So Jed also works for Lotus Energy. So g'day, Jed.
Hello.
It seems to be tech challenge day today for me. I'm just bring that on. I just had one of my cameras fail. It started glitching, so I've moved over to my backup camera, which is there. It is. It's not quite so fancy. Yeah. So Jed, what do you do for Lotus Energy?
So initially, Tony and I actually met at our local coffee shop. Barista there introduced ourselves quite a few years ago. So I started off just doing the commercial solar installations for Lotus because they're essentially a cooperative. So at that point in time, I was able to invest into the company, and then I started doing a lot of their commercial installations for them. So they're sort of like selling their own PPAs to customers, really. And then from there, Tony started talking to me about the recycling plant. It's obviously something that's needed for the industry, and got pretty excited about it. And yeah, it's just, he said that he thinks that he's able to do it. Got all this equipment in and said, wire it. And I went, and then, yeah, it's been a long road. That started really at the start of lockdown. So we were able to get a few weeks into there at the start of lockdown, and it's just been an ongoing process of trying to get everything to work, trying to get all the machines to talk to each other, and then finally the test. And yeah, it's a very successful test as well.
Oh, cool. Hey, I've got Tony back. Sorry, Anthony back. Anthony, I'll just bring you back in. There we go. Sorry about that. I just had a little glitch at my end. It was good to have back up there, Jed. So thank you.
No worries.
So, Anthony,
Thanks, Jed.
yeah, you do more than
I said
just
some really
recycle
great
solar
stuff.
panels, don't you?
Camera dropped out.
Anthony, so
Sorry, Glenn.
you do more than
Sorry.
just recycle solar panels.
Yeah, absolutely. We have our own corporate PPA, and we've got an unlimited fund for that. Am I still online, or have I dropped out?
You're big, so I just made you full screen.
Okay. It suits my head, Glenn. That's okay. Yeah, look, we have our own corporate PPA, and we do a consumption-based PPA, and we collaborate with a lot of other solar installers, and obviously, Jedlec's one of our core installers, and we're actually about to publicly list as a digital security in London, which is very unique, given that one, we're a cooperative, and two, becoming publicly listed. And I guess the whole recycling part is, the extra string to our bow, but a really important part of that we have a full life cycle solution for what we're doing, and not just for us, for everybody in the industry.
Right. Wow, you really do diversify. So I was having a quick look at Lotus Energy's website, and I see you've done possibly this renewable project on the planet.
Yeah, we won that project. If you're referring to the project in Ethiopia, we won that project mid last year, and I was recently in Ethiopia, which was challenging getting there, given the COVID situation, and I managed to get COVID actually, but I was there for 6-7 odd weeks and a couple of weeks in quarantine coming back home. We like to work in, I guess, what people would classify as challenging markets in developing nations. So we're also in India as well.
Right. Okay. Hey, we've got a few questioners popping in, and some of them can be live. I might just bring one or two of them on. So I'm just seeing if Abby, are you able to turn your camera on? Are you available? I can see you in the waiting room. And Jed, I just might drop you out for a minute. How about you, Ray? I've got Ray in there as well. This is a bit of an experiment for me, seeing if I can do some live Q&A. So, yep. But we do have some questions and comments coming in. So, Ray, I don't actually see your camera. So, all I can see is a blank screen. So, I'm not sure if you're actually there. So, let's just try that one. But let's try your voice, Ray. You got a question?
Yeah, I'm here, Glenn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, one of the great questions is, considering we hear a lot about recycling of materials, how are you sifting through the materials that come out of the actual solar panels themselves?
Sure. Great question. Ray, we're using mechanical and air pressure. So one of our targets was to not use chemicals or any sort of incineration of the materials, because that's things that happen overseas, unfortunately, with our products when they're getting shipped overseas. So it's primarily air pressure and gravity. That last component to achieve it, what I was talking about before with the cable sheath and the epoxy backing, or maybe I just dropped out at that time. That part is really challenging for us to achieve it, not utilizing chemicals, but we are working on that. So as it stands, we can actually separate all of the materials I was talking about before, in terms of just call it the glass powder and the solar cells, and the aluminium and the copper and the cable sheath. So just think of the PVC sort of component, from the junction box to the MC4 connector and the cable sheath. That last part though is really tough, right?
Just as a follow-up, I'd ask you, Redwood Technologies over there in Nevada, who does the batteries, would you guys be looking to work with to basically take on recycling battery cells as well?
it's certainly been a hot topic for us internally. It probably is the next phase of our expansion in terms of different production lines. But at the moment, we're really looking to duplicate what we've built in Victoria, up in New South Wales and Queensland as a priority. But in terms of collaboration, say with Brentwood or anything, we've been a cooperative. We're extremely collaborative. We never say never with anyone. We're open to engaging with other groups as well, locally and abroad.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
Cheers.
Okay, thanks, Ray.
I noticed, Glenn, Abhishek had asked the question about is there a fee or other solar panels?
Actually, Abhishek's here online. I'll just bring him on board. Hang on. Here we go.
Okay.
So he's live now. So Abby, what was your question? You're muted, Abby. I think you did type the question. So Anthony, do you want to have a stab at answering it?
Sure. And I can't see myself on the camera at the moment, so I don't know if I should move my head left or right, because I know you've asked me.
You're fine. You're full screen, like you're the man.
Okay. So, Abby's question about disposal, if there's a cost or a value, do we pay for the modules? At the moment, we pay for cable. No big surprise to all our listeners out there that copper and aluminium cables you can get paid for disposal. We pay for those. At the moment, we're not paying for the modules. As a very general rule, you look at about 50 cents per kilo for the disposal cost. There is a product stewardship program which has been in discussion with departments of sustainability and government, etc. And if that ends up getting introduced, I dare say that the solar modules will end up having an intrinsic value. But there's no sort of, I guess, fixed timeline for that at this stage. And of course, the rail, etc., and all the mounting gear, we can recycle all that, and we do pay for that as well, which can help offset the cost of the modules.
Right. Thanks, Abby, for that question. Sorry, the audio wasn't working there, but thank you very much. There's some text questions that have come in here to do with indium, and can you recover the indium from a solar panel?
At the moment, so there's quite a few things. So there's also selenium. I think I mentioned ruthenium earlier. All of those rare earth metals, we're currently running batch trials and sending off the results off to some scientists to basically work on how we extract those rare earth metals. They're really important for Australia and all countries. There's a strategic position. It's hence they call it rare earth. But at the moment, we're not exactly sure, without the support of the manufacturers, of which modules have which rare earth metals embedded in them. So, for instance, we've had no-name brands coming in, of course, that have perhaps faltered, and we've had, from everything through to a sun power system that's been removed because of an expansion. I'm not saying it failed, I'm just saying that it's been removed because the customer wanted to increase the scale of what they had on their roof. And those various modules have different rare earth metals in them. There's things that we've already identified that are indicators towards that, but it's still a learning process for us, in all honesty.
Right. Yeah. I imagine these are fairly deeply embedded elements, which using a mechanical process, you're somewhat limited in what you can extract.
Yes. And some of the giveaway is the tint of the glass on the solar modules, and but it also relates to brand, so manufacturer, and even the make. And as all the listeners know on here, Glenn, there's many hundreds, if not thousands, of products that have come through the marketplace.
Right. Okay, look, you sent me a little video of one panel being recycled. I might
Yeah.
just run that now, but warning to listeners, it's a bit scary. It's loud. All right,
Yeah.
so if you've got your headphones cranked up full bore, maybe just tune them down a little bit. It's only about a minute long, so I'll just play that. So here we go. Wow, that was a bit intense. So that was one panel being munched to tiny pieces.
Do I explain something there, Glenn, in regards to that?
Go ahead.
So just for the listeners' knowledge, and from that little video, we did that for a visual aspect. In actual fact, over the shredder, there's quite a large hood that encapsulates that, because the dust, the silica dust, is a concern, and we have dust suppression. So effectively, the modules, as you could see there, are crunched up via a shredder. They then go on to another stage process, which basically pounds them down into very small granules. And then we use various methods by sucking all the material through via an air extraction, and then using weight and gravity and air pressure to segregate the material. So what ends up happening is it goes through a lot of equipment that's very common in the mining industry, of cyclones and zigzags and some of these terminology people aren't quite so familiar with. But effectively what it does is that's how it ends up separating into the very small materials. And part of it, as probably everyone can appreciate, is very much our intellectual property, and we're very eager to protect that, of course. But ultimately, we believe there should be probably maybe half a dozen recyclers nationally to service the entire market anyhow.
Okay, so yeah, that was one of the other questions that came in through social media lines was, are other companies doing this as well?
As far as we know at the moment, no one's actually recycling all of the module, aside from, say, extracting the aluminium. So there's various companies working on their processes, etc. And we were fortunate enough to be in a position where we could invest in the plant and the equipment straight up. So it's great what everyone's doing, because we need lots of different companies basically attempting this. Not all of us will succeed, of course, but in the end we'll end up with some very stable businesses out there recycling them, and businesses they need to be sustainable themselves from a financial perspective, as the sustainability aspect for our industry.
Yeah, I believe in our little chat we had before the live stream that you said there's some very dodgy recycling going on in some countries, which is probably worse than recycling.
Yeah, and I've seen it firsthand overseas, of the modules getting burnt and the metals getting scraped, which is a great shame, because I'm sure the people that are packaging them into shipping containers and sending them offshore are expecting that they're probably getting repurposed or something. But it's unfortunately it's not what's happening. And just sometimes that downstream aspect of what we do, once it heads offshore, we really don't know what happens. And for us, we're quite proud in saying that as it stands, we've placed all of the outputs of it locally. And we're trying to engage with other solar manufacturers, of mounting structures, and there's an obvious Australian company that's a great solar module manufacturer that we're looking to engage with supplying some of those components to them as well.
Cool. Now, I've got some pictures you sent me. I'm just going to bring one on screen here. So there it is there. What are we looking at there? Oh, sorry, you can't see. That's right.
Oh,
because you're in the car.
The first one with the black glove and the aluminium. I can see the black glove.
That's right, the black glove with...
Yeah,
that's the one. So is that what comes out of the recycling? We might have a little problem. I might have to jump over to Jed because Jed knows a little bit too. Jed, you there? You're my backup.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
So can you tell me what this picture's about?
I'm going to come a bit closer to the screen so I can see it. So that's your extruded aluminium. Yeah, so that's just, at the edge of it, it's the first stage is separating the aluminium from the rest of the panel. It's once it goes through the second process, it pretty much ends up as like little balls of aluminium. And that's the first part that's dropped into the first bin. I think that's all it is, yeah.
So the equipment that we just saw munching up a solar panel before, there was some big pieces of aluminium coming out,
yep.
But then it must go through a second phase where it's being further reduced.
Yeah, so it goes through a mill. It's pretty much smashed to pieces using a lot of force. So once it goes through the shredder, it goes through the mill, and then that's the next result. That's obviously the heaviest item of the panel, so that's the first part that drops out of the process. Everything else is moved around by air after that.
Right. Okay. It sounded like it was a pretty noisy process. Is it like headphones on when you're working in there?
No, it's shocking. Yeah, it's loud. It's very loud.
that's why I put a warning when I was turning the Muncher video on. Because it gave me a fright when I first played it.
There's two parts of the plant running at the same time. So you've got the cable processing as well as the mills too. So it's extraordinarily loud. Now,
we've got Ray online as well. He's got another question. So if you want to just hang on there, Jed, because I'm not sure, you might be able to answer this one, but Anthony's lost his connection. So I'm just going to bring Ray on. So you ready, Ray? Thumbs up? Yep.
How are you, Jed?
Hello, Ray. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I've actually got two questions. One's actually from one of the LinkedIn contributors asking, out of the whole panels that go in through the recycling process, how much actually ends up at landfill out of a whole panel for starters?
Yeah. So at the moment, it's about 5%.
About 5%. So 95% of it's used. Okay. And
95%.
Yeah. Now, my personal one would be this. Do you see the economic side currently, like the financial side, like for every dollar you put in, how much return are you actually getting from the actual process?
Now, this is 100% a Tony question because I'm just an electrician.
Okay.
But I know the financial side of it is it's a stewardship from the government, sort of, so the manufacturers are paying for end of life of materials for electronic waste. It's it's the margins are thin for it.
Okay. Yeah, because admittedly, we have a lot of people that would actually invest in the company itself if it was going, say, to private rather than just relying on government funding, of course, because at the end of the day, we know what politics is like. So, yeah.
100%. Yeah, there is a stewardship. There is one coming at the moment for electronic waste revolving around batteries. I'm not 100% sure on that. Once again, that's obviously Anthony's strengths, but Yeah, I couldn't answer that question honestly.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you for that, Jed.
Thanks
Not
very
a
much,
problem.
Ray. Now, we've got Anthony back, I think, but he might just be on voice. He's got some poor reception problems there. Anthony, can you hear us? Doesn't sound like he can quite get through. The joys of doing a live stream from the footy in your car in where I forgot where he was, in the Dandenong Ranges, I think, somewhere. Yeah, there's a few questions came in on the chat, which I think Ray actually picked up. So thank you for that, Ray, for picking up Saif's question. There's also a question from Frank, and Frank's a regular here on the show. So Jed, I might just pop you back in the green room. There you go. Okay. So question from Frank. I'll just bring this one on screen. So where is it now? Frank. So Anthony, you're there. Yes, we've got you. Whoa.
Back.
They're back. Anthony, we've got a question from Frank. He says, "Hi, Anthony. Regarding the reuse of serviceable panels, what are your plans?"
At the moment, we haven't started engaging on perhaps repurposing them. It perhaps is what Frank's referencing. Given that we do a lot of work in India and Ethiopia, we have already discussed placing them as community projects and looking to donate those into villages or schools, etc. in some of the areas that we work. That's actually part of our business already, is giving back to the community and that social impact component. Locally here, there's a whole heap of challenges in Australia that we probably, from our perspective, we probably wouldn't look to reinstall them in Australia.
Yes, being a bit of a standards guru, I can understand the challenges. So once you've got a used product, trying to get it approved, virtually impossible for any rebate. Safety standards have to be applied. So yeah, it's pretty challenging to have a reuse panel, certainly in a rebated program. Yeah.
Yes. I did catch sort of the end of something Frank asked Jed about, the dollar value, etc. At the moment, we, being generous to ourselves, we're probably breaking even. In actual fact, we're probably losing a bit of money processing them. And Jed's 100% right. We need a product stewardship scheme in place, which already exists for the e-waste sector. And technically, solar modules are classified under e-waste. And Victoria and ACT are already legislated that it's illegal to place them into landfill. So in reality, they shouldn't be going to landfill. But when there's no recycling facility, of course, it makes it difficult for anyone to be, doing the right thing in terms of recycling. So we hope that in due course in the coming months, or hopefully not years, but that a product stewardship scheme is established. And what that will mean is there'll be some sort of levy on the industry that will look to cater for the recycling. And it's not uncommon in Australia at all in lots of products that we buy in the marketplace.
We've got a follow-up from Frank. So Frank's actually in the ACT. Actually, no, you're not anymore. You were, I think. I can't remember if you've moved. But Frank says, I was thinking of overseas in an aid program rather than locally. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Frank caught it, but we are in Ethiopia and India, and that's what we're looking at. That's where we think we can supply it, and we already have operations and maintenance there, so we can support the product as well, not just dump it on them.
I guess the challenge is it's a heavy product, and so shipping is still a significant cost.
Yeah. Look, and definitely, Glenn. And the irony of the STC LGC scheme in Australia is that it, of course, reduces the capital cost when purchasing, which is great for the market and market penetration. But when it comes time to look at a second-hand product, it realistically makes them essentially worthless, because why would you want to utilize secondhand goods when the truth is the STC, and in the basic terms, is pegged against the serial number of the solar module.
Yeah, it's even worse than that. A system that's perfectly good but maybe has one faulty component often gets completely scrapped because to bring up to current standards is triggered, or you can't buy that panel anymore, so they just throw away a perfectly good system. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I've got quite a lot of panels sitting at the back of my shed that are perfectly good that have been taken off systems for upgrades. So I might be one of your clients soon.
Fantastic. And just on the client aspect, thus far we've had a lot of inquiries from, say, local government, and hence the reference to Fremantle even. And what I would say, classify, and maybe this is just the respect and a biased opinion of more professional installers, like a lot of the solar cutters group have reached out to us, people that I guess are trying to set higher standards for themselves, and but ultimately it'll end up being a mandatory requirement to recycle them. But as it stands, and in truth, we need the support of industry to make sure that these things are getting recycled, and we're pushing down that path. Like, we are in the industry of renewable energy, and the sustainability aspect we can't turn a blind eye to, from the disposal of the products for end of life. It would be quite ironic and hypocritical of all of us to do that.
Anthony, got a question from Mark. So I'll just bring Mark here. So Mark does quite a lot of large-scale projects. So Mark says, hi guys, I think you're doing a great thing taking the lead on recycling modules. After a recent webinar from Dr. Martin Green, advising by 2030 we could be paying 10 cents per watt. Would this impact on your current business model for recycling?
So I think you're marking about paying 10 cents per watt for the purchase of solar modules. From what we're seeing at the moment, like in terms of commodity prices, I couldn't honestly perceive how that could happen. Copper has skyrocketed, aluminium skyrocketed. I know there's a shortfall of silica for the manufacturing of the glass for solar modules. But based on that question and the 10 cents, yes, yes, it would impact on us, and it would definitely create a challenge, and probably highlights even more so the importance of a product stewardship scheme. Again.
Yes. I mean, if we just use an example of a less environmentally friendly product like asbestos, we know that we have to pay for end of life. It's just part of being, the law. Basically, You can't just dump it because it's hazardous. And if e-waste is actually a problem because of it will not biodegrade, it becomes a mechanical, contaminant of the soil. Then we have to think about ways of paying for that at end of life. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of products are sold with no end-of-life plan, and that's left to future owners of the dwelling, the building, the business, or governments to deal with. So we do need to address this.
As Australians, there's lots of examples such as the aluminium cladding for a lot of the larger buildings and medium-scale buildings in our inner metro areas, where they've become problematic to dispose of that. Car tires is another one. There's already a product stewardship scheme in place, so when we buy our car tires, we're paying a levy that's built into it for the end of life recycling. So as Australians, we probably object as industry people. We don't want to see an extra few cents per watt onto the cost of the modules, but in reality, it's probably where it needs to head to cater for it.
Yeah, if I was to draw a parallel with the battery industry, from my experience, there was a technology which isn't really used anymore, wet cell nickel cadmium batteries. So wet cell nickel cadmium about 40 years ago came onto the market, and they were kind of like the thing for UPS systems for banks and data centers because of their deep cycle. You could do 100% depth of discharge. They had a relatively long cycle life, but there's only one small problem, that they had a lot of cadmium in them. And as you probably know, cadmium is not easy to recycle. From my understanding, the end of life cost of a nickel cadmium battery, a wet cell, is more than the purchase price now. So you end up with loading all the responsibility onto disposal, and that leads to people dumping, basically, literally being gifted to off-gridders. That's something I've seen where I live here now. People have turned up with a trailer load of, I've got some new batteries. They came from a UPS in a bank. They were free. And I go, well, you just took someone's toxic waste for free. What are you going to do with it now?
Well, it's funny you mentioned cadmium, because a lot of our thin film modules out there, the CDTE, cadmium telluride, pronouncing that correctly, that's got its own challenges as well. Definitely.
Yes, there's a very small amount of cadmium in cadmium telluride panels compared to wet cell nickel cadmium. But it still is an environmental toxin. You don't want to put it in landfill, and it leaches into waterways. Yeah, cool. I'm just checking. Oh, here we go. Another question's come in. So this is, maybe this is a comment from. Hang on. There's two, sorry. So Kyle asks, if you pay for recycling when you purchase the item, then everyone will want to turn it in for money. Never any trash, because it's worth cash.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, what they're saying there is that there's a value to it all of a sudden. It's quite probable that could happen, and there's pros and cons to that, but in a lot of ways, it's a positive if they end up with a value, because then people do take them to the recyclers. And we're all probably more familiar with the South Australian bottle and can recycling scheme, where there's value, and those products end up back at the recyclers, which is a great outcome.
Yes. I mean, I'm from New Zealand. We had money back ever since I was a kid, and I used to pay for my sweet habits by collecting bottles and taking them to the shop and cashing them in. So yeah, when you put a value on a waste product, whether it's a levy through a government regulation, you turn everyone into a recycler because it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So, I've noticed that someone's commented, Glenn, about the last 5%. And what we're doing there. If you don't mind, I could answer that we're currently running some tests on, it's a technical name of a hydrocarbon extraction facility. So we're actually utilizing microwaves to break down the PVC, TPS, PE, and we can actually combine the cable sheath that we have from the cable recycling plant as well in there. And from those trials, we end up with a syngas, so a combined blended gas, and some number 2 fuel oil and activated carbon. So the final result would mean that we would have zero waste. It's quite a hefty cost, but that's the next stage that we're doing at the moment. Those trials have already been done, and they were successful. And now we're actually looking to expand our facility, because where we are, we're already bursting at the seams in terms of space. So that's our ultimate target, to be at that 100%.
So Anthony, how many panels are you currently recycling at your Thomastown facility?
Sure. So the facility, we're not looking to break any land speed records. There's a lot of concerns that we have around the safety aspect. So we've been taking it quite slow. We've set up the plant so we can process 100 modules per hour, and we're only doing one shift per day. Where we're located, we could actually run 3 shifts, and we could actually increase that production up to about 500 modules per hour. So if we work on roughly 20 kilos per module, you can do the math and work out it's quite a lot. But in respect to a solar farm, one solar farm can be tens of thousands of modules. Then it's can become a drop in the ocean. Of course, we use the plant so it's a bit multi-purpose, so it can actually process e-waste as well, and do some support services for e-waste recyclers. And that was because we were concerned about the volumes coming through.
Cool. So, look, we're coming towards the end of our Toolbox Tech Talk, but I do have a question myself. If any of the listeners have some solar panels to recycle, what do they do?
Sure. So they can contact us. We've got a 1300-0 number, or just info@lotusenergy.io, so Indigo Oscar. As it stands, we've been, I'll say very generous in terms of what we're doing to encourage industry to recycle, and taking into consideration where people are, helping them with logistics. We've got a few drop points available. So yeah, more than happy to engage, and we're going out of our way to support particularly installers who are trying to do the right thing.
Actually, Ray just asked in the chat, how many factories do you plan to have in Victoria?
Sure. So, Ray, at the moment, we've got the one in Thomastown. We're currently looking at a very large site in Campbellfield, and we'd actually look to centralise that. So we would look to increase the scale of the plant there, as opposed to having a north-south, east-west sort of aspect. In terms of our expansion, we want to have one in Victoria, one in New South Wales, and one in Queensland as quick as we can, because we can see the demand for it.
Yeah, I guess you can just look at the STC and LGC numbers and see where all the panels are going. Yep. Have you got any stats on how old panels are when they turn up at your facility?
We've only just started recording some of the data, and so I mentioned before, we've got high quality brands in there, and all the way through to literally no label, no serial number products in there. So it's too early to say, but we have identified some that have failed that were in the 5 to 7 year sort of age bracket, and no name brands that our listeners would know. They're certainly new to me, but yeah, we are recording data. And in terms of a product for recycling, it's great in terms of the information that we can make, and in typical terms, the back label and the serial numbers. We're actually recording all that data and weight, and then what we're getting out of them. So then in the future we can say, to Frank, hey, that particular panel's worth $8 or whatever it is, as opposed to a negative value. But yeah, it'll still take us a while for that.
Anthony, can I suggest you start collecting a few iconic panels, because they could become a bit of a museum item? Look, I don't know if you can see behind me here, I've got a Tideland panel which I rescued that was going to go to waste. It was made in 1984. It still works. It's glass, laminate glass. It just proves that a well-made panel has an incredibly long life. You
sort of inspired a thought there, Glenn. Maybe we should have a wall of historical modules as a display.
A bit of LED lighting behind them, if they're translucent ones, or it would make a pretty impressive entrance way to your factory. It's just a wall of panels. Well,
given your backlighting, mate, and your gold chains, I think I need your advice on.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm a style merchant. Yep. So I'd just like to see a couple of last questions before we finish. Someone asked, are there any pickup spots interstate?
At the where we've got a few drop-off points, and we can also organise the logistics for everybody, and we get exceptionally good rates because we're actually shifting material ourselves as well. So happy to help out with people's inquiries there. We manage it all, and we don't add any costs, I should say. So in terms of logistics costs, we don't add anything to that.
And I think this might be a bit of a repeat question, but just in case anyone joined us a bit late, what are the actual materials that you get as a result of recycling the solar panel?
Sure. So at the moment, we're recovering the see the powdered glass, the silica cell, so the solar cell itself, the aluminium, of course, from the frame, the copper from the short, albeit small amount of copper from the cable at the back, and the residual that we're left with is the cable sheath, the junction box, and call it an MC4, but the connector itself. So yeah, that weight to volume ratio at the moment, we're sitting at about 95%.
And last question, I think someone got confused about where you are. They said, where in New South Wales is your facility?
Okay. So we're in Thomastown, Victoria. Maybe the confusion is we do own a site up in New South Wales in Cootamundra. We're actually building a solar farm there, and we have a very large industrial warehouse approved there. And we're just tossing up whether it's the right location or not for New South Wales in terms of logistics. But yeah, in due course, we intend to have a site up there. So open to suggestions to the listeners out there that are more local.
Cool. Well, thanks, Anthony, and thanks for taking time out on your Sunday and your son's footy match to chat to my audience.
Yep. Hopefully I didn't miss him kicking a goal. Great, but pleasure to be on your show, mate.
No worries. And I've put your URL up on the screen so people can go to your website if they've got any follow-up questions.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions too from all the listeners. It's fantastic.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to the game.
All right. Thanks, Glenn.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye, Anthony. Yeah, well, thank you everyone for your questions and those who came in via video link, which is a first for me to actually bring in an audience. So thank you, Ray and Jed and Abhishek. Though it's a bit of a technical challenge to do all this stuff, but this is kind of how I'm wanting to go forward, is to make it much more interactive with my audience. So for those of you who didn't have a chance to come on live, maybe next week, which actually I should remember, I put a big note here for myself. Is to remind you guys that next week I've got another one on reuse, because it's kind of a bit of a theme running here at the moment, and it's Yuri Baton's from Re-Electrify. Now, Re-Electrify, I think it's based in San Francisco, but they actually have a branch in Melbourne now, doing some really fascinating stuff with batteries and reusing them. So both with old and new with the technology. So they can take old batteries and turn them into in energy storage systems for a second life. Things like taking batteries from cars, which often end of life for a vehicle is 80% capacity, and turning that into a storage device with a usable capacity for many more years. So next week I'll have Yuri Baton's from Re-Electrify on here, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll be taking some live questions from the audience via video. So if you want to do that again, turn up with your phone or camera turned on, ready to go, and I'll put the link into the description so you can just click on it and join us. So that's it for today. And thanks once again, everyone. See ya.